Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about monitor and OpenShift cluster. This is a very important video in the first introduction to OpenShift and Kubernetes. This is one of the topics which we're going to discuss, monitor and OpenShift cluster. In this particular topic, we firstly going to understand what is machine resource, what is machine config, and how nodes have the monitoring set it up for them. Now first let's start with the machine resource. Now machine resource basically describes a cluster node. Now nodes can be what we have already seen over here over on this particular example. These are the nodes, these are machines over here. So we have two machines over here which is running, and when you do a get nodes, and you can see these two nodes have actually started. Now if you notice the difference between machine and nodes, until the name says, you don't know that it is a master node or a worker node, because a machine configuration is like that. So here the name is different. That's why you're able to identify this as master and worker node. If the name doesn't say master or worker node, you wouldn't be able to find from this particular output that either this server is master or this server is worker node. Now when you get the OC get nodes, you can clearly identify which is the worker node and master node. Though it can be identified by the name, the role here clearly says that it's a control plane or the master node, and this is the data plane, which is the worker node. All right. So what this means is that node is a physical system, which means you're gonna have a virtual or bare metal or a VM assigned for each node. So which means that in this situation, it is using the N2 standard for instance type on GCP, which is hosted on Europe West 1. So it is using this particular instance to host your content. So that's what it means. All right. So node basically sends two different outputs. Okay. Because node is where you host a pods. Okay. So what is pods? Pods basically has the content or the application which you are going to manage. So the application will be hosted on a container which has an image. So pods can contain one or more images. I'm sorry, one or more containers. So a cryo is used for running the container, and kubelet is a service which runs on worker nodes. What is kubelet? Kubelet is basically a service which communicates with the master node, and master node sends all the requests and instructions to kubelet on that particular worker node, and the kubelet works on those things. Now how this is configured? Using machine config. Now what is a machine config? Machine config resource defines initial state and any changes to files, services, operating system updates, or critical OpenShift service version for the kubelet and cryo services. So basically it applies the config operator applies the remediation changes directly on kubelet or on cryo engine. OpenShift relies on the machine config operator to maintain the operating system and configuration on the cluster machines. So the machine config operator is a cluster level operator that ensures tasks such as system update and any kind of a task which is required for the, like critical OpenShift service versioning. All those needs to be done by all your services gets going. So it makes sure of that. So let's talk more about the monitoring part of things. So here we have the node over here. We have the pods running. So two kind of logs will be kind of exported. Two kind of output will be exported. One is the application metrics, application pods metric endpoint, where your CPU information, memory information, all your you know information towards your data disk related ones. All those things will be exported into the monitoring stack, which we have over here, called Prometheus and Grafana, where we use that internally within OpenShift cluster to capture all these resources and to give you an update. You can basically look at those resources by going to observe metrics and alerting. I'll tell you about that in the hands-on session. On the other hand, the similar pod sends an output of events and logs. Now, what's event and logs? Event and log basically um, gives you information about what is happening with that pod, what is happening with that particular service. What is there any warning or error or information is coming through? So that's basically event. Logs, on the other hand, basically gives you for deeper troubleshooting on your application side of things. Logs, for example, if you're running an Apache HTTP server image, in the log section, you'll be understanding the logs of that particular service which the image is running for. For example, Apache HTTP server's log, you'll be able to get it. Even talks about the pod, which happens in the pod level. Logs talks about the application level, like what actually happens inside the image. So that kind of information it gives you on the logs. So even to logs, it's a little different. All right, now let's go and do the hands-on for the same, and I'll see you on the next video.